Owning a boat comes with a number of perks, like being able to fling your favorite fishing rod around. And here's another perk. Geico's boat insurance covers your boat and your belongings. And with specialist support from agents that are as passionate about boating as you are, there's so much value that you'll want to high-five someone. But not while you're holding your fishing rod. That's a prized possession. So hold on tight with both hands and keep it covered through boat insurance. Get more with Geico.
With so many options, why choose Arizona State University?
For me, the only online option was ASU because of the quality. Their faculty was really involved with their students and care about your personal journey. The dedication to my personal development from my professors, that's been extremely valuable to me.
Earn your degree from the nation's most innovative university. Online. That's a degree better. Explore more than 300 undergraduate, graduate, and certificate programs at asuonline.asu.edu.
This is Wheelbearings. I'm Dan Roth.
I'm Sam Abu-Al-Samad.
Am I supposed to introduce myself?
Yes,
Hi.
that's your cue.
You know what?
Yes.
It's your second time around. We figured you know the drill.
Now it's your turn.
Sorry. Hi. I'm the other idiot. No, I'm Casey Liss, and I am here to ruin the show as I did a few episodes ago.
Not true. You elevated the level of discourse.
Something like that. Hello, gentlemen. How are you? Sorry
Welcome.
for already ruining everything.
That's all right, Casey. Glad to have you back.
Well, it is good to be here.
Yeah, we're glad to have you. And this week, we'll talk about what we're driving first. And we didn't draw straws or anything. Who wants to go first?
Let's let the guest go first.
All right.
Fancy.
And then I'll chime in with my thoughts, having driven the same car.
All right. So, Casey, what do you have to confess?
So I have nothing to confess about my wife's Volvo and the Sensus being maybe a little slower than I had initially thought it was. Nothing to confess about that at all.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll return to that topic a little later on.
Please, Dad, no. But no, I had a couple of weeks back an Alfa Romeo Stelvio. I did not have the Quadrifoglio because it wasn't officially announced here in the States yet. But I had the Stelvio.
Well, it's been announced. It just isn't on sale yet.
It wasn't running.
Yes, that's absolutely right.
That's right. So I had the pedestrian, $55,000 Stelvio, and
you got to pick your words better, okay? Alfa Romeo and pedestrian, that's a thing that happens.
Oh, God, that's true. I should have thought that one through.
Italian cars in general and pedestrian.
Yeah. That's a fair point.
All right, sorry. I'm going to have to stop now.
No, it's all good. No, you're exactly right. So I had the not as remarkable as the Quadrifoglio, the normal run-of-the-mill, if you will, Alfa Romeo Stelvio. And, I really liked it. And I definitely had a few problems with it, but in the grand scheme of things, I thought as a surprisingly small, I should have known how small it was going to be. As a reminder, my wife has a 2017 XC90, which is a behemoth, or at least by my standards, I normally drive.
No, it's a behemoth.
Yeah, so I normally drive a 2011 3 Series, and so the XC90 is huge, and the Stelvio was considerably smaller than that. Which, if you look at it, I mean, what are the competitors? X3, is that right? It's like X3.
Yeah,
equivalent.
X3, Audi Q5, Mercedes GLC. They're all in that same class.
Yeah, so it isn't as big as I would have expected. Not to say that it's small. It's just, I don't know, for some reason, having never seen one before, I thought it was going to be bigger than it was. And that's not, mind you, a complaint. That was just me not setting my my expectations appropriately. But that being said, the conclusion I came to after just a few days with the car is that it was really zippy. And this is why I'm not a professional car journalist, right? Because there's much better words in the English language than zippy. But that's really,
you know what? That's not necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah.
I mean, what we want, for the average person that is considering what car to buy, I think there's nothing wrong with expressing it in expressing what you think of it in language that people can relate to, and that gives them an impression, especially we from someone like you who, as you say, is not a professional car journalist, but just likes to drive cars, and people want to know what it was like to live with the car for a week. And, so I think, having, don't count, don't put yourself down for expressing it that way. Cause I think there's absolutely nothing wrong with that.
Well, I appreciate it. And that is my conclusion, is that it was very zippy. It was not, a Trackhawk. It's Trackhawk. That's the Hellcat equivalent, right? I always get Trackhawk and Trailhawk backwards. So it was not a Trackhawk. It was not a Quadrifoglio, but given what it was, it was the normal level, don't call it pedestrian Stelvio, and it was reasonably quick. I couldn't cite a number off the top of my head from like 0 to 60. Maybe one of you can, but it felt speedy enough for me. But the thing that was most striking about it is I felt, especially for an SUV, it handled stunningly well. And I'm curious to hear your thoughts, Sam, because maybe you didn't feel the same. But to me, I felt like it was so well planted, so much better than in any other SUV I've driven. And not to say that you can drive an XC90 with any particular quickness or with any particular efficacy, but I feel like the XC90 is reasonably sturdy. I mean, yeah, the weight is all way up in the air and it's not going to turn very well. And it's a behemoth, as we already talked about. But all told, I think it's a reasonably nice car that handles reasonably well. And it
does. It doesn't embarrass itself.
Exactly. And the Stelvio, man, it was so much better. It was so well planted and never really made me feel like like all other SUVs tend to, never really made me feel like I was up in the sky. Now, to be fair, I'm obviously cross-shopping, if you will. I'm comparing this to a very much not performance SUV. I'm comparing it to the humongous sled in our garage, but I can't say
don't sell your XC90 short. Like you guys have what, the T5,
the T6. Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's not. It doesn't feel like it, but it's also that's not messing around.
No, it isn't. It isn't.
That vehicle has plenty of power. The chassis is pretty good. It handles decently, so it's not a bad point of reference. If you understand what the XC90 does, it's a premium SUV in the European sort of mold. It handles and rides decently well. That's not a bad sort of way to sort of frame the Stelvio.
Yeah, and I think the XC60, having not driven one, I would imagine is much of the same. And so I was just flabbergasted by how well it handled and how reasonably that engine was mated to that car. I didn't often feel like I was gasping for breath, when I was driving around. And I do occasionally feel like that in my wife's car. Not often, but it happens. Now, the Quadrifoglio, I'm sure, would just be a total hoot, but that's not really the point of a normal Stelvio. So that's kind of my quick thoughts. Sam, how did you feel about the driving dynamics? Because I'm very curious to hear, especially since I presume you've driven some sort of Porsche SUV at some point. I believe you just had the Trackhawk. So how does this compare to all that?
The Trackhawk is sitting in the driveway right now, and we'll do a deeper dive on that next week. But just in short, that is a completely insane car and vehicle, and I'm just glad it exists. But no, as far as the Stelvio goes, I think the Stelvio, is really a delightful vehicle to drive, and I'm someone who given the option, will always choose, a car over any type of utility vehicle. But that said, the Stelvio is essentially a Giulia that, is sitting a few inches higher with, a pseudo semi hatchback, semi wagon body on it.
I have a confession.
Yeah.
It reminds me of the Outlander Sport.
Visually, you mean?
Yeah.
Huh. I can see that.
I mean, the Outlander Sport's not a bad looking car, but
when you drive it, though, there is absolutely, aside from the fact that it has 5 doors and 4 wheels,
sure,
there is, absolutely no relationship between those cars.
No, they
do both have 4-cylinder engines. So
right, I'm being the most shallow I possibly could be right now. I'm just saying, visually, honestly, I think that's that's pretty good for Mitsubishi styling. All right, let's move on.
Yeah. So I thought the Stelvio was a lot of fun to drive. The 4-cylinder engine they've got in there is the 2-liter 4-cylinder, and like most vehicles in this class or actually increasingly in many different segments now. It's a 2-liter with direct injection turbocharging, and this one puts out a little more power than most of the engines of this spec. It's about 280 horsepower. Typically they run somewhere in the 255 to 270 horsepower range. So it's a strong engine. It's not an especially heavy vehicle. It doesn't. It feels comparatively light. It's not lightweight. At 4,000 pounds, but it doesn't
given what it
feel.
Is.
Yeah, no, I mean, given its size and everything, it's not an unreasonable weight. It's probably, I think, about 700 or 800 pounds lighter than your Volvo. So it is fun to drive. And while you were chatting, I just pulled up the car and driver review, and they clocked it at 5.4 seconds 0 to 60.
That's
which
quick.
Is,
yeah.
I can remember when a 0 to 60 time, in 5.5 seconds was supercar territory.
Oh yeah.
And that wasn't that. I mean, I'm old, but
that wasn't that long.
That
was
that long ago.
Early 80s.
Yeah.
Right.
Or even late 80s, early 90s. 5.5 seconds was still considered a very quick time. So this vehicle has no trouble at all getting out of its own way. And, frankly, compared to the car I had right after it, I would have actually preferred to have them in the opposite sequence. This being, February in Michigan. And so we happened to get a winter storm last Friday that dumped a foot of snow on us. And we'll get to that later. But, even with just a little bit of snow, this thing did really well. The all-wheel drive system felt very capable. It was on snow tires, which is always a good thing. That always helps. But it's got enough ground clearance, to get through a pretty good amount of snow without too much difficulty. One of the things you mentioned, Casey, in your video review that we'll put in the show notes was, you thought visually the 19-inch wheel combination looked a little bit small. Mm-hmm, and admittedly, from a purely aesthetic standpoint, given the size of the wheel arches, I think there is a little bit more of a gap there than what you'll find in a Quadrifoglio. But also as a real world driving, for real world driving dynamics, I think it's actually the best combination. Having 19s or even 18s, I think would look fine on here because it gives you, more sidewall on the tires, and makes it much more comfortable to drive. Right now the roads around here are in pretty horrendous condition. I had to go out yesterday somewhere, and there was a stretch of road I was on that was just full of craters. And this is a road that was just repaved about 5 months ago. The freezing, the deep freeze we've had recently, has just popped chunks of asphalt out of it. And this thing did fine on that. It actually has a surprisingly supple ride, but it has really good body control as well. I think, one of the things that I think that they've done really well with both the Giulia and the Stelvio is, I think they've done a really fantastic job on tuning the chassis, to give you a good combination of, fun driving dynamics, but also something that's very livable, no matter where you live.
Yeah, I completely agree. And for the record, the thing I was talking about with the wheels, that was 100% aesthetic, and I think you're exactly right that more sidewall is nothing but a good thing, and in a lot of ways the trend toward non-existent sidewalls and or run flat tires is not really doing a lot of good for ride quality and things of that nature. But I stand by, from a purely aesthetic standpoint, I really think it needed another inch or two. Like looking at the pictures of the Stelvio Quadrifoglio that was just announced, that to me is the appropriate ratio of sidewall to wheel. But I don't know, maybe I'm just too much of a child at heart.
Nothing wrong with that.
I mean, if you want more sidewall, you could just go up a series in tire.
Yeah.
Or you can play with the tire size, and you can use a circumference calculator to figure out actually, if I go up a size in aspect, what do I have to do to the width? And I don't know. There is a breaking point where you've got a tire that doesn't fit on the wheel, but it's another story.
Yeah, and the thing to keep in mind too is, if this is going to be a daily driver, particularly if you live, somewhere in the northern half of the country where we do get potholes, I have had wheels get bent, from hitting potholes, even on 55 series tires. On our Jetta a few years back, my wife hit a pothole, and we were pulling out of the garage one day, and I saw this bulge in the sidewall, and I looked at the wheel and saw this dent in the wheel, and it turned out to be something that was not fixable, and so I had to buy a new wheel. And that's with alloy wheels, that's not an inexpensive proposition.
Yeah.
So. It's definitely worth keeping that in mind. And that's actually one of the reasons why, when we bought our Civic last year, we opted to go with the EX model rather than the Civic Sport, because we bought the hatchback, and we could have gotten the Civic Sport, but the Sport comes on 18-inch wheels with lower profile tires, whereas the EX comes on 17s. So we opted to go with the EX and the 17s rather than the Sport, specifically for that reason. We wanted that bit of extra sidewall, both for the ride quality and also just to protect the wheel.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. And I mean, you're absolutely right. When you told us in Slack when we were having this kind of discussion the other day that we just sound like old men. It's yeah, we have. I paid for wheel repair and truing and tires and just, yeah, it makes you tired after a while.
Yeah.
So what else did you like about the Stelvio?
The interior was very Giulia, which makes sense. Like my brain understands that this is in many ways just a lifted Giulia, but it was surprising that the interior was effectively identical. I do like the interior. I do think that it has a lot of BMW touches in it, and since I drive a BMW, that makes me happy. The infotainment, I think we talked about last time I was on the show, and it's fine. Sufficient. I would love to have
the interface is fine. The responsiveness of the system, though, is definitely slow.
Yeah, I mean, I'm getting used to that these days. Unfortunately, hi Dan. But
yeah, we'll come back to that. But on the Alfa interface, the system that's in there right now, I was talking last week when I was at the Chicago show with somebody from Alfa Romeo, and they acknowledged that yes, the system that's in there right now is underpowered. From a computing standpoint, and the Giulia and Stelvio will be getting an upgraded audio system at some point, probably for the 2019 models, which will improve its performance. Because right now, personally, I am not a fan of touch screens. I prefer to have control knob type interfaces, like iDrive and like what this one has. But, with iDrive, or MMI, Audi MMI or other systems, when you twist that knob, when you're on a screen where you're doing, entry of an address or something for a destination, you twist the knob, it spins around, the indicator on the screen spins around, quite responsively. So it follows as you twist the knob. This one, there is a distinct lag between when you turn the knob and when it actually selects the next letter in the sequence. And, that's not good. It's quite annoying, actually. The interface itself is fine. There's, there's nothing wrong with it. It is very iDrive like, but it's just slow. And that is something that they've said that they will be fixing.
Yeah, and
how do you think they're going to fix that?
It's going to get an upgraded hardware, probably for 2019 models.
In the tradition,
so the current generation ones aren't going to get any better, but the the newer ones will get better.
Well, in the tradition of expensive brands nickel and diming everyone to death, it appears that the 2018 Giulia and Stelvio do support CarPlay, and I presume that means also Android Auto. But the tester I had,
no, they don't.
Well, it's on Apple's website. The 2018 Giulia and Stelvio both support it, but the tester I had,
it's not in the car.
Okay, so that's what I was going to say. The tester I had definitely did not support CarPlay, and
how can they say they support it if they don't? I don't get it.
So here's the thing. I think that there's
Go
two
ahead.
different stereos. I think there's a fancy pants stereo that does have it, and I haven't looked at this in a couple of weeks, so I might be steering you wrong by accident. But when I went to build the Stelvio, not the Quadrifoglio, of course, just the regular stereo Stelvio, when I was building it, it looked like there were a couple of different options for the audio system, and I'm assuming that one of them does support CarPlay and one of them does not. But I assure you that the 2018 tester I had did not support it, and it sounds like, Sam, it was the same story for you.
Yeah, none of the 2018s have that support in them. What's indicated on the Apple website, all that means is that the manufacturers have announced that at some point in time that they will be supporting it, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the cars they're building today have that support built into them.
Well, that's nonsense then. They should say, like, we plan to support it, not will we do.
Yeah.
I
would guess, when they get the hardware upgrade that improves the performance, they will also include that support for Android Auto and CarPlay.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. But I mean, otherwise, the interior was nice. There was nothing that I could think of that made me go, ugh. I mean, other than the interface, like as I talked about in my Giulia review, particularly the video review, I concur that the interface is very iDrive-esque. But one of the great things about even my iDrive setup, which was from the early 2010s, is that I have little physical shortcut buttons for the radio, for the navigation, for the telephone, and for something else. I always forget what the other one is. And so I can hit one of those buttons and immediately jump to, the radio, like the FM radio, or I can immediately jump to the navigation screen. Whereas it's frustrating in the Giulia and the Stelvio because you have to hit the menu button and then scroll down to whichever one you want, and then potentially scroll like one or two screens deeper in from there. And it just having that shortcut to go directly
and
there.
at each one of those stages, you turn the knob and then wait before something happens.
Yeah. And so it's like they give it, then they take it away, right? Like I like having the knob, but I hate that it's not as easy as I would want it to be.
Yeah, so you've got the 56K dial-up system. Eventually they'll give you the DSL. And then, once they fully upgrade it, and so this is the Giorgio platform too. So that's actually pretty important to the car. I know that we're talking about sort of just a very small part of what makes the Stelvio experience, but the infotainment system, this is a car that there's going to be potentially a lot of FCA future riding on. And so they've got to get it right, and they've got to put the right hardware in there. They've got to figure out the control scheme, because if you look at what they've done on the Chrysler side of things, Chrysler and Jeep and Dodge, those vehicles all share Uconnect, and it's pretty much the same thing when you step out of a Cherokee and into a Pacifica, and even back to like a 200 that they don't make anymore. But you know what to expect, and it has to be that kind of thing with whatever they replace that with.
And I suspect that is exactly what they're going to do, is probably replace it with similar hardware. The Uconnect is based on a Harman platform. And so I wouldn't be surprised if they switch over to the Harman platform for the Alphas as well.
Well, driving it sounds lovely. I don't think I'd want to do anything other.
It is a lovely experience. And as I said, I would have, in retrospect, I would have preferred to have actually switched the sequence of the two cars I had, because they picked up the Stelvio from my home right after I left for Chicago for the auto show, and they dropped off what I had originally scheduled when I was booking cars back in December. It was originally intended to be the Giulia, the 4-cylinder Giulia with the same powertrain, the 2-liter powertrain and all-wheel drive. And it turned out when I talked to my wife the next day that there was actually a Giulia with a 4-leaf clover on the fender.
Oh no!
Which considering that it was starting to snow at that point, and by the time it stopped snowing on Saturday morning, we had a little over a foot of snow dumped on us, and so there was a pretty hefty pile of snow sitting on top of the the Giulia Quadrifoglio when I got back. And the Quadrifoglio, of course, in the Giulia Quadrifoglio is only available in rear-wheel drive. It does not come with all-wheel drive. It did come on snow tires. It came on some really nice,
how generous of them.
Pirelli.
The Soto Zeros.
Yeah, the Soto Zeros.
Yeah.
Which, when you're on hard-packed snow or on ice, they work really well. But the problem is, no matter how good your snow tires are, if you don't have enough ground clearance to actually get over the snow that hasn't been plowed from your side street yet, you're pretty much not going anywhere. And, we had to go out somewhere on Saturday afternoon, and my wife and I, and, I managed to get it cleared out in one direction to get out to the street so we could get out of the neighborhood. But going out that way, there's a downhill slope going out to the main street. So I was comfortable with going out that way, but I didn't figure I was actually going to be able to get back up that hill coming back in, because it hadn't been, as I said, it hadn't been plowed until the following day. And so I came in from the other direction where the road was more level. And that was a mistake. In the span of 3 blocks, got stuck twice, just because the snow was so deep. There wasn't much I could do, and had to get out and do some digging and get a little help from a neighbor, and finally managed to get it back to the driveway, but it was a struggle.
So, I mean, I really like rear-wheel drive cars, especially powerful ones.
Oh, so do I.
In the snow. This sounds like it was too much, though.
When you've got good stability control and traction control, even in snow, there's nothing wrong with, and especially when you've got snow tires, winter tires on there, there's nothing wrong with rear wheel drive. And, this was not a function of rear wheel drive versus 4-wheel drive. It was just, ground clearance and too much snow, and it doesn't matter what you've got in those conditions. If you don't have enough clearance to get over the snow, you're not going anywhere.
Yeah, that's true. I didn't realize it was that low, or maybe it's just that much snow.
Well, it was that much snow. Like I said, we got a foot of snow, and they, the county road commission was focusing on the main streets, and they didn't get into the residential neighborhoods until later in the day on Sunday. And there was just no way around it. I mean, even with the Civic, we wouldn't have been able to get through that either. So, and it's not on snow tires; it's on all weather tires.
So I also feel like this is part of the FCA ploy, and maybe it's not, but just I feel like all of the coverage, all of the Giulia loaners I've really seen you have been Quadrifolios. Like they did a really good full court press with their top of the line $80,000 super high performance model, and you've heard
they've gotten the 2-liter ones out there as well, and there is a 2-liter in the local fleet here. I don't know what happened, why they ended up delivering me the Quadrifoglio instead of the 2-liter. But I know there's one around, because I know the magazines have had one, that they've tested. So, all
right, well, I'll dial back my conspiracy theory, but I feel like we've heard a lot about the Quadrifoglio, which, I mean, it's exciting, but like the one that everybody's going to buy is the 2-liter. And you have to look much harder for coverage of that car. And I'm really interested in it because, like Casey, I really like European sedans.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Although I have an admission, another admission is that I've settled on a car to replace the Crown Victoria, and it is not European.
Oh,
so. Really?
Well, wait. Let's shelve that for a second, and let's finish the Alfa Romeo talk. But I am actually also interested to hear or to see what the 2-liter is like in the Giulia, because if you look at the Stelvio, which is at least a reasonably heavier than the Giulia, that motor is we were talking about earlier is sufficient for that car. And so I got to imagine it actually would probably be pretty good in the Giulia. And although I can't say that I've been offered a spin in the 2-liter Giulia, I will say that when the Quadrifoglio got delivered to me and then eventually picked up, the chase car was a 2-liter Giulia, I think a 4-wheel drive one. Now, when the Stelvio was delivered, the chase car was like a Jeep Compass or some other piece of trash like that. But
the Compass is actually really good.
Is it? Oh, got it.
Yeah, the new
I had it a
Compass
few
is
weeks
awesome.
ago.
I had it, what is the little
I had
tiny
it during
Jeep?
the auto show?
Is not the Compass?
Renegade.
Oh, maybe that's what it was. Okay, I'm sorry.
Actually, the Renegade is surprisingly good too.
Whatever
I
it was,
am not a fan
looked
of the
awful.
Renegade.
I've never been in one, but it looked
it's
terrible.
the Renegade's not the greatest looking Jeep or the greatest looking vehicle, but it actually drives really well.
It drives
I was
okay.
Quite surprised with it.
Yeah, it was a
Yeah,
Renegade.
I think-
You're right.
If you like the Renegade, just go buy the original, which is the Fiat 500X, because it's better.
Oh, is that
Yeah,
basically the same
fun-
car?
Yeah,
Same thing.
they are the same vehicle with different bodies on them.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Different interiors. And I actually, personally, I do prefer the 500X. And if I was going to go for one of the small FCA utilities, I would actually go with the 500X because I actually like the way it looks and it drives really well.
I do too. You were trying to make a point though, Casey. But did we get to your point?
Yeah. Just in that, I think the 2.0 may actually be a decent car because my initial thought, having not driven the Stelvio, so back a month or two ago, having driven the Giulia Quadrifoglio, not having driven the Stelvio, I would have thought, the 2-liter Giulia is a piece of trash. Not literally, of course, but it's going to be so disappointing compared to the Quadrifoglio because it's half the power and it's not not going to be any of that magic there. But having driven the Stelvio with that same drivetrain, I actually think there's probably something there, and it's probably actually really, really nice. And so I am like you guys curious to hear and see what the coverage of the 2.0 is like, because it's actually a lot better than I would have initially thought. So we'll see if any of us can get our hands on one.
Well, it's about 300 pounds lighter than a Stelvio. So,
That's a lot.
And I'm just looking at the Motor Trend review. They clocked it at 5.1.
I mean, that's fast. So that's really not bad at all.
Well, their track runs downhill, if I remember from what Car and Driver used to say about Motor Trend.
Oh my goodness! All right, so
downhill in both directions.
Yeah,
with a strong tailwind.
Yeah. They don't average.
So now tell us about what's replacing your delightful Crown Victoria.
Well, I mean, eventually it'll replace the Crown Victoria because it's just not the car for me. We've had. Because the Jeep is going in for some work, we've had the grandma car day today. So I drove the Crown Vic to make sure that it had its battery charged up. And then my wife is borrowing her mom's car, which is I think it's an 06 Sonata, which it's a decent enough car. But these are two very low miles cars we're talking about. And it's just this interesting time capsule when you get in each. But I need more engagement out of my vehicles, and I've done the European car thing.
Well, the 06 Sonata is definitely not an engaging car.
Oh, no, come on. Is it the one with the big motor? Because the ones was it a V6 at that time?
Trust me, Casey. Even with the V6, it was not an engaging car.
It wasn't engaging, but it wasn't that bad.
It was an excellent value.
It's a fine car.
Reliable.
Yeah.
But not engaging in any way.
It does have the 3.3 liter V6, so it's quite powerful.
Yeah.
Actually, for what it is. But it's just dynamically, it feels unfinished. They've done a great job moving from that car, which was that was a big step for them. The styling, the size, the equipment, that was a very competitive car for the price.
When they went from that generation to the 2010, I mean, that was a huge difference.
Yeah, and the Sonata now is very good. So it's interesting to drive it, 10 years later and just see the difference. But I've done the European car thing. And as entertaining as that is, I really, really hate the repair bills. And
preach
the braking stuff. And so I'm old and I'm lazy and I don't want to work on the cars anymore unless I actually want to work on them. And I'm not quite at that point in my life where I can have a toy. So I was like, okay, what sort of checks all the boxes. And I figured out that the Mazda 6, there's the Mazda 6 Touring, which is nicer on the inside than the Sport, which has cloth seats and stuff, which I'm not quite as much a fan of cloth interiors. I do like a little bit of luxury because I'm spoiled. And I don't want the Grand Touring because you can't get the manual. The 6 Touring has a manual. And that's it. And they're actually very inexpensive used, and you can get a really great deal on them new. So I'm like, at some point, there's going to be some kind of deal that happens. I'm not sure what, but the Crown Victoria is going to leave. Somebody should buy it so I can afford a down payment on a Mazda.
I tell you what, my wife had a 2007 Mazda 6 Grand Touring that had almost every option on it. We bought it new in 2007, and I don't remember what we paid for it, but it was something like $25,000, which, given what it was actually, I thought, a very, very good deal. And she loved that car arguably more than she loved me. And it was only because it was getting quite old, 10 years on. And we really felt like it was time for her to get something newer and a little larger. Well, more than a little larger, as it turns out. But that's when we got the XC90. And there are few cars I can imagine. I can even think of another car that she could even possibly liked near as much as her Mazda 6. And she does like the XC90 at least near as much as her Mazda 6, which is a testament somewhat to the Mazda, but really to the XC90, because I cannot verbalize how much she loved that Mazda. And we had an unbelievably good ownership experience for a decade with that car. I mean, nothing ever broke on it. It was reliable as hell. I mean, I think we had like one or two out of band repairs, but it was minor stuff. Whereas I was computing the total repair cost on my 335 since I bought it used in 2012.
You could have bought 16 Mazda 6s.
I could have bought a half
right?
a Mazda 6, truly. Like I had done, I personally have put $10,000 in repairs into that car. And I think BMW paid for 90% of one repair, which it's a long story, but suffice to say, there's another $5,000 that BMW foot the bill for. So there's $15,000 worth of repairs on a car that was delivered to the original owner in the end of 2010. And I took delivery of in the end of 2012. So yeah, I mean, her car, we put effectively no money into, and it ran like a top for 10 years. And I cannot say enough good things about that car. It wasn't her particular car with, the automatic and whatnot. It wasn't really what I wanted, but it wasn't my car. So that was fine. And I think this, the modern Mazda 6 with a stick, just like you were talking about, Dan, I cannot get behind that enough. Not that you need my permission or approval, but that is a solid pick. I really approve of it.
And if only Mazda would see fit to offer the station wagon here in North America, at least a dozen automotive journalists would buy it.
Yeah, I stupidly did this. I was like, well, I know Ford makes a Fusion wagon, and I know they're not the same.
They make a Mondeo wagon.
A Mondeo wagon, and I know they're not the same platform, not the same car they were at all.
Yeah, they are. They are now.
The 6 and the Mondeo.
Oh, you're talking about the 6 and the Fusion. No, they're not the same.
Right. There was that point where they were, but I was just like, wagons are popular, not here. So let me see if they do make and I was like, oh, they make a 6 wagon. And it's so pretty.
They're about to unveil the refreshed version in a couple of weeks at the Geneva Motor Show. So
yeah, because my other choice that I was pretty into was the TSX wagon, and I was like, it's automatic only. And my experience with automatic transmissions has not been fun. I had both of those S60s.
But this is a non-European premium brand automatic.
But those were Toyota automatics. They were Asian Warner 55s, and they were a time bomb in everything they were in. They were in Saabs, they were in GM cars, Saturns, and I think the only car that didn't blow them up was the Toyotas. And they used this special SAE 3309 fluid, and just so expensive when the valve body got gunked up, and then it would just chew up the 2-3 friction set. And I learned a lot about automatic transmissions, and I was like, I want a goddamn manual.
More than anyone should ever know.
Yeah. I was like, the worst thing you have to deal with a manual is like a dual mass clutch that's a lot more complicated than, the old single mass flywheels, and everything has a dual mass clutch, it seems, these days. But whatever. We're getting too geeky. Let's move on.
I really wish you hadn't told me about the Mazda 6 wagon, because now I'm looking at Mazda 6 Europe's website, or Mazda Europe's website, and this is a good looking car. And I am not really beautiful car. I am not really into wagons yet. Like, I'm starting to understand the draw.
What's the matter with you?
Just hold on. So I still don't think that they're the prettiest things in the world, generally speaking. But I find myself, as I get older and older and more boring, that I'm looking at each of these wagons and thinking, wow, that's not bad. Yeah, I haven't gotten to the level of insanity that I'm looking at a CTS-V wagon and saying, "Ooh, that looks good." But
well, I mean, the CTS wagons is hard because it's also not all that roomy, and so wagons with a stick are also like impossible. You're dealing with basically like a Volkswagen, which is again.
Well, the Subarus back in the day, not
lovely.
anymore, but back. Yeah. You know, before I had the 335, I had a Legacy GT, and it was a sedan. But the Legacy GTs of that era you could get a Legacy wagon GT with, so you could, if I'm not mistaken, you could get the turbo that was in my car, which is basically the detuned STI turbo, and then with a wagon with a stick. And in retrospect, if only 22-year-old Casey would have known better, I should have bought that car.
Yeah, I was looking for weird stuff. You know, I was looking at TSX wagons, Legacy Spec Bs, which
nice car.
Is my favorite Subaru of all time. They're hard to find and they're aging now. So, but yeah, anyway, in the meantime,
speaking of Subaru's aging. Last week in Chicago, they were celebrating the 50th anniversary of Subaru in America. They launched 9 new 50th anniversary specials.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
All in the same shade of pale silvery blue with gray wheels.
I bet they didn't invite Malcolm Bricklin.
No, but they did mention him.
All right. Okay. Yeah. Did they mention Ernie Bach?
Yes.
They did.
Yeah. Tom Dahl, the current CEO of Subaru of America, talked about the history of the brand.
All right.
And talked about when they launched it.
Oh, this blue is nice. Actually, I don't think it's bad.
Yeah. No, it looks good.
Actually, it's a really interesting story. How Subaru got into the U.S. and those two names, Malcolm Bricklin and Ernie Bach, are sort of intertwined, and then there's the rest of Subaru of America that is somewhat separate from those. And it's a fascinating little story that has a New England tie-in. So of course I'm all over it. But yeah,
well, anyway, what were you driving this week, Dan?
I had a Mini Cooper. I'm not sure the name. I can never figure out Mini names. It's the Countryman Electric. So the electric company. So the Mini's name for it is the Mini Cooper SE Countryman All 4.
Wow.
Which it's the Countryman with plug-in electric hybrid. It's got the little tiny Terror Turbo Triple. That's my name for it. It's actually not tiny. That's a big triple. It's 1.5 liters.
It is big for a 3-cylinder.
And they've put an electric motor on the rear axle. So it's a through-the-road hybrid. And it's got a battery in it. And I sort of run hot and cold with Minis. I still like the original Mini, although it's lost the plot a little bit from the first couple generations. It's still good. And then there's some just like overly clever stuff. I really dislike the Clubman. It's not one of my favorites.
The current generation Clubman. Well, we talked about it a few weeks ago. I was not enthused with that one, but
yeah.
And I haven't driven the Countryman yet. I do have the Countryman E scheduled for about a month from now or so, I think.
Yeah, it's just and it's funny because it shares its platform with the Clubman, but it's the Clubman is a little bit smaller, a little lower roofline, that kind of thing. So the extra space of the Countryman makes it feel a little bit more comfortable. I think a little less sort of function following form, and the hardware is really good. It drives really well as a hybrid because you've got that electric motor that fills in the torque holes. And it just really feels real good from behind the wheel. The one sort of complaint I had was that it seems to run out of breath kind of quick. Like if you need to merge and go from like 20 to 80 lickety split, it feels real good, but it doesn't seem to put on the speed as quickly as you might like. So that was really my main performance complaint. Otherwise, it's a Mini, so it rides decently. The run flat tires are loud, but I actually like them because when I've had Minis before, I've done things like nail giant potholes in the winter with them, and you can just keep going. And So I really do see the value of the run flat tire, and I'm willing to let go of some of the problems with it, where they ride kind of crappy and they're loud. And that's still the case here. But even the styling of the Countryman, it's good. It walks that fine line between being too clever and being what you expect it to be. So I liked all the little touches. I like how you look up even when you get in, and every little piece of the car is sort of fussed over, and that's BMW's thing, that's Mini's thing. So even the plastic bezel around the Bluetooth microphone has a little microphone symbol in it. Like, that's not necessary, but they did. It's a nice touch, like it tells you somebody thought about this piece other than just, designing a piece of plastic to be injection molded with a bunch of holes in it. Like we put a pattern in it. Like I like that. And I found little Easter eggs like that around the car. And it's got the mini sort of toggle switches and stuff. I kept going for a push button to start it on the dash before I realized, like 4 days into having it, oh yes, it's this giant toggle down here because it's mini, and it has to be. That's where the start button is. I'm looking at the website right now.
Yeah. When I had the Clubman about a month and a half ago, when I picked it up from the airport when I got back from a trip, and I got in the car. And it took me like 10 minutes to find the engine start button.
Yeah. And you're like,
I'm looking in all the places where anybody ever puts it, except for the toggle down there.
And your just language gets worse and worse and louder and louder.
Yeah.
I do find, like, the first time I get in a mini media vehicle, I have to spend about 10 or 15 minutes going through and just shutting a bunch of stuff off. Like, I don't need the little ring of lights around the giant center. I was just about to ask about that. This looks truly terrible. No, but it's Mini's thing. So if you like that, it's part of what they are. So you can't really sit here and say, I hate it, so it shouldn't be, because there's so many people that like it, that like it's just part of what Mini has. It
is the brand, and if it's not for you, then you probably shouldn't be driving a Mini. But if you like that sort of thing, nothing wrong with it. It's a matter of personal taste. It's like anything else about cars.
Yeah, it's fun. The seats are good. It has the lower cushion extends, which is a rare thing, but it's actually really nice. The seats are comfortable. The back seat is roomy. It's actually pretty roomy because it's the biggest Mini. And you don't
pay the Maxi Mini.
Yeah, you don't pay any penalty for the hardware. The hybrid gear still has good cargo space. The thing that I didn't like the most, and I was a little shocked by it, was the limited range. It only really does about 270, 250 something miles, depending on how brutal you are with it, before you have to fill up the tank again. And I thought that was a little low.
Yeah, well, I'm guessing that it probably only has about a 10 or 11 gallon tank.
Yeah, it does have a small tank, so that's the trade-off. It just I haven't driven a car with a range that limited in quite a while, and part of the reasoning, I think, for the electric gear is we extend the range, and that's not necessarily the case. Mini has this niche where this is a great SUV for somebody who lives in a tighter, more population dense area, right? Like, it'll do all the things a larger SUV will, but it'll still fit into those tight parking spaces. Like, it would be right at home in the People's Republic of Cambridge, Massachusetts, Dan, or wherever. Like, it's that kind of thing, and it's a high style vehicle, so it wears its heart on its sleeve, which is, it does all the right things without being over the top. It's kind of like, it is a grown-up Mini. As much as they want to say that the Clubman is the cool uncle, this is like the funky aunt or something. I'm not sure if that makes sense. I was surprised at how much I liked it. It bodes well if Mini can still do a vehicle that it drives well. It was fun to be in, and it's a BMW X1 when you get right down to it. So they've managed to get a lot of variety out of that same collection of hardware. You've got the X1.
Yeah, and in fact, in Europe, they offer the 2 Series Active Tourer, which is actually even closer to the the Countryman hybrid, because it has the same powertrain, the same plug-in hybrid powertrain, and it's a kind of a tall wagon BMW that they don't sell over here.
Yeah, honestly, the electric stuff is really well thought out. You can schedule the charging. You can sort of select when you're in electric mode, when you're not. Like it does all of that stuff really well. So, and it's a lithium-ion battery, so it's energy dense for its size because it doesn't have a very large battery. But I
think it's about 8.5, 9 kilowatt hours.
Yeah, I think it's 8 something. That's not that much, but it does well for itself. I was pleased with it. It steps off lively. It has switchable driving modes. So eco is very very smoothed with the inputs, and mid is what it's just sort of its default, and then sport is actually a little bit aggressive and gives it some response, which is nice.
Is there an EV mode so you can like force it to drive electrically? Okay.
Yep, there is. So yeah, I mean, and then it has like driver only HVAC, to save some energy and stuff. So it's
interesting.
It's real pleasing. It does everything it promises to do, and because it has an S badge on it, it offers that elevated level of performance. Because a regular Countryman S would have the turbo 4-cylinder, the 2-liter, versus this with the triple and the batteries. So it's good overall. And that's my ringing endorsement, and now we should move on.
All right, so let's get to some topics, specifically Volvo Sensus.
Oh God, I gotta go.
Before we started recording, you had some comments about that. I think you had something you wanted to say to Dan and I.
You guys, I'm sorry. So again, Aaron's car is an XC90. It's a 2017, and I was on this show, several episodes ago extolling the virtues of the Sensus and how I think it's a really good setup, which I do. And I think it's really, really nice, which I do. And I think it is a very opinionated design, but I like it. It did take me a while to adjust to, okay, what are they thinking here? But once I got a grip on, I understand what the kind of modus operandi is, then it started to make a lot of sense.
You're a lot more delicate because I'm more like, what are they thinking here?
Well, the thing is, unlike a press car, this is our car, right? So I kind of got to adjust to it one way or the other. But anyway,
you're making the payments on it, so exactly. you have to justify it to yourself.
Exactly.
That was actually, not to get us too off track, that was a big reason why we wound up with the Jeep, because we drove an Edge and we really liked the Edge. I was like, I am not paying for my Ford Touch. Every time I look at that, I'm going to see the monthly payment. I'm going to fucking punch it. No.
Yeah. So, you have to embrace the Sensus if you own an XC90, and all in all, I really like it. However, up until today, actually, it's been reasonably cold here by my standards, which is to say it's been purely tropical by your guys' standards. But nevertheless, my soft and delicate hindquarters needed to have the seat heaters on. And when you start the car, even if it's been remotely started by phone, so it's only, the motor is running when you start it by phone, but it seems like most of the infotainment is not on, et cetera, et cetera. So even if it's been sort of primed and the engine has been running for a little while, when you get in the car and twist the little start twister button thing, and you try to turn on the seat heater, which is controlled via Sensus on the touchscreen, what's infuriating about it is that it doesn't respond to you as far as you can tell. So you'll start the car, you see the icon, you mash on the icon, nothing happens. So then you mash on it like 18 more times if you're anything like me and impatient. And if it was just in a position where it ignored everything while it was kind of booting itself up, that would be fine. Annoying, but fine. But where everything really falls down is I mash on my seat heater button about 304 times, and nothing happens. But then once everything sort of gets itself going, it now has queued up all 304 touches on the screen.
It's buffered all those touches.
Maybe not every single one, but you get the point I'm driving at, is that it's all of a sudden you hear the click, 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 click. And even though I'm not touching the screen right now, as it's cycling through the 3 different seat heater levels. So 3, 2, 1, 3, 2, 1, 3, 2, 1, 3, 2, 1, 3, 2, 1, 3. And then eventually it stops, and actually it never stops on 3, which is what I want. It always stops on like 2, 1, or off. And that's the thing that drives me batty about it. Like if it just threw those touches on the ground, in a lot of ways that would actually be better, because at least when it finally gets itself under control, I would just start the process anew. But the thing that infuriates me about it, which I think Dan was trying to tell me several weeks ago, is it kind of cues up those touches. And eventually, when it's good and ready, thank you very much, I will service you on my timetable. And that's what it ends up doing. And it is driving me a little bit crazy.
You know something about the Stelvio. There's these two physical switches below the screen.
Yeah.
When you tap it, it just turns on the heat for the seat.
Yeah.
And there's another one next to it for the steering wheel too.
Imagine that.
Right. The thing is too, like the touchscreen buttons and the physical buttons do the same thing. They send a message out on the bus that says, "Hello, computer, turn on the heater." This module, this node that's over there.
It goes out to the body computer and tells it what to do.
It's so the fact that, you've got the physical switches, they're not waiting for the rest of that GUI to boot. They're not waiting for Windows 3.1 to figure out how to load, screen.dll or whatever. Like they're just there, and you can send it the message and it'll go down CAN and do what it's supposed to do. The problem is Volvo's overly obtuse interface that it takes forever for that processor to get its attention back to you, and where shit is located. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to be too blue. Where things are located in that system, like, it's confusing. I am surprised though you can't make it just default.
Even once it's already booted up, it's not always on the front screen.
No, it's kind of
sometimes you still have to swipe from one screen to another to find the button you want.
That's true, but not for HVAC.
Whereas
for
the physical buttons are always there.
Just
as you were saying about your BMW, Casey, and those shortcut buttons around the iDrive knob.
Yep.
It's the same thing.
It's
nice to have those physical shortcuts.
And that's the thing, is that most of Sensus I really, really don't mind. And in fact, I would almost, maybe not in this company, say it's pretty good. But I think that there are some things that just really should not be on the screen. So as an example, volume. I think we can all agree, anyone can agree, that you should not have a touchscreen control for volume. That's just silly.
Absolutely right.
And I think that seat heaters and also temperature are also like that. And in this car, seat heaters and temperature are both on the touchscreen. And that's very, very, very frustrating. Now, on like a Tesla, for example, which I believe they're also on the touchscreen, I find it less egregious because the touchscreen is a lot more responsive, or at least the last time I've been in one.
I think Tesla's interface is probably better. And there's enough other stuff to complain about with the Tesla. But no, you're right. I mean, like, part of it though is just the Volvo, their HVAC stuff. Like, I don't know, they're not. It's always doing something on its own, and it makes me crazy. Like, I can't shut off the automatic whatever where you're going to put the air or recirc or like, I can't make that system behave. That's one of the things that has driven me away. Was I don't want you thinking for me. I want you to obey. You are my machine. I pay for you. Do what I want, and it bugs me. And so I can't get past that. But you should be able to make the seat heaters and the steering wheel heaters or whatever default to on, at least with a remote start, when the temperature is below, 30 something, right? Like, actually
Chrysler does that. The Alphas are actually the only FCA products I've driven recently that don't do this. All the Chrysler, Dodge, Ram vehicles I've driven, when the ambient temperature is below 40 degrees, and you start the car, whether you do it with the remote or the button in the car, it automatically turns on the seat heater and the heated steering wheel for the driver.
Yeah. And I would be surprised if you can't, somewhere in that giant mess of a menu in a car from a Scandinavian country, find something like that. I don't know. Maybe it's just, you're just supposed to suffer and build some character before the thing warms. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
You're supposed to be a stoic Scandinavian would not complain about these things.
That's true.
Well, the other thing,
welcome to the dark side.
And the other thing that's infuriating is, for the passenger, there is no wheel to be heated, and so for the passenger, the top level icon, the seat heater icon, just toggles through the seat heater. For the driver, however, it opens up a submenu because when you hit the seat, you get the submenu for the seat and the wheel, which is another thing that's infuriating. Like, if you're going to go the route of putting this on the touchscreen, fine. I don't agree with it, but fine. But at least for the driver, give 2 different friggin' icons so that I can mash on each of them immediately, independently. That is infuriating, and that's where I think this is really falling down. And I see this in my personal opinion. And I'm curious to hear what you guys think. It seems that this is where the future is going. Is that more and more of this stuff is being controlled via touchscreen, and less is being controlled via physical buttons. And to me, most everything, like I said, fine. I don't care. Most of the radio controls, with the exception of volume, fine. If I can't even skip forward and back without going to the touchscreen, I think I may be okay with that. But
no, I care. I care about that.
But wherever your line is, though, I think that we can all agree that HVAC controls should have physical controls, even if that's the only stuff, or I guess I should say HVAC and a couple of basic radio controls. That to me is like the bare minimum, and to move that into a touchscreen is very frustrating.
Sam has like all the inside scoop on this, but I think it's cheaper for them to do it this way.
To do it in the touchscreen? Yes.
Yeah, it makes updates a lot
engineering all those switches, and adding, to the wiring harness, because you have to connect up all those switches, so that's more wires to run, engineering and validating those switches, manufacturing them, getting them, the tolerances on those are actually surprisingly tight, if you want it to look good. Yep. And, this is part of why Tesla, there's 2 reasons I think why Tesla, eschews those. One is, to save money, and then the other part is, just because they want a higher tech look. But I think really the primary thing was to save money, because it does cost a lot of money to do that. And I think they just we're cutting corners. And what a lot of manufacturers have been doing over the last few years is, after going down that path of going touchscreen, they've actually reversed course. I mean, Ford, famously did this. Honda has done it. Other manufacturers have gone back away from touch sensitive controls back to physical controls in the last 4 or 5 years.
Well, and it's like, if you're engineering a platform, right? Like our Alfa example, right? That's a Giorgio platform. So there's more than one vehicle that's going to be made on that. So it makes it easier it reduces your parts count. Your wiring harness is the same for the platform, or it can be more the same for the platform, even if you're making the sedan and the crossover, if the difference is in the screen and it's in the software. You've got a different screen that plugs in, but the plug is the same. And, so you can start to really realize some production economy. And I will also say that Tesla's system seems to be a lot snappier and better to use than some of the other systems, like Honda's system with their dual screens and weird controllers and stuff. Like I don't know.
That's going away this year, starting with the RDX.
Like the user interface and user experience is where they're really falling down. I would accept a lot more of this stuff if it had better UI, and if they just sit in the car and don't have your head so far into it. Think like a user. And that's really where they need to come at it. It's like, if I'm just a dumb user, how am I going to break this? How am I going to find the thing? And it's very frustrating when, as a user, all you want is one thing, and you've got to make 3 steps to get it. And there's that's not acceptable to me. And when there's useless crap too, like, why do I need to see an animation of volume bars on the screen when I turn the volume knob? I have ears on the side of my head. I can see when I can hear when I turn the thing. I don't hear with my eyes. It just frustrates me. It's like, I don't need your eye candy shit. Get it out of here. It's distracting. It's annoying. I don't need it. Yeah. So I'm going to calm down now. Had some coffee. Good.
And the thing that's doubly infuriating about this on the Volvo specifically is that there is a row of physical controls below the Sensus thing. And that's where they have the hazard flashers, like the defroster.
Because those have to be a physical button.
Sure.
The flashers.
Yeah, but I mean, then you have the defroster, you have back track, forward track, volume. There's I'm trying to find a picture of it, and I can't find one right now, of course, but there's a big gap that looks like it's maybe like an ambient air temperature sensor, or maybe a microphone or something, where, I don't know, maybe you could put some friggin' seat heater controls. Wouldn't that make sense? And then, of course, because reasons, the glove compartment is electronically opened for you. So you have to have a button for the glove compartment because it's too difficult to pull a lever. You're making me hate this car that I actually really love. We got to stop talking about this. But
the interior, it is beautiful to look at. How about we talk about the ride quality, which I also don't like.
What's wrong with the ride quality? You're
it's shitty.
Oh, come on. It's not that bad.
It's flinty. It is no X5. It is no X5.
Now you're just whining, Dan.
No, you go drive an X5.
The XC90 had great ride quality.
I disagreed.
Oh, my word.
Didn't like it. Even with the air suspension, I was like, the structure is stiff. Why have they tuned the suspension to act like it's a whatever? This is one of those Dan's out in left field things because everybody else has not had a problem with it, but I didn't like it. So, all right.
What else do we have to talk about? I want to be able to still like this car by the time we're done recording, so we got to move it on to something else.
Well, on our list, we have a couple of things.
So last week I was in Chicago for the auto show there, and back in the auto blog days, we used to have a running joke about the Chicago show being the biggest little auto show in America because physically, it is the largest auto show. The McCormick Place in Chicago is just enormous. And I mean it's a huge show. And like most auto shows, it's really designed as a consumer show. It's put on by the local dealer association, and it's meant to be a place where consumers come in, check out all the cars from all the different brands. And from a news standpoint, the Chicago Auto Show for many years has been comparatively small, although other auto shows like Detroit and LA are rapidly chasing it down to that size. But that's a whole other issue. But one of the few actual interesting kind of bits of news out of the show last week, I thought, was the U.S. launch of the Volkswagen Arteon, which is the replacement for the CC. And it launched last year at the Geneva show, and it's finally coming to America this summer. And it's a really good looking car.
I am not at all.
Yeah, I agree. It's sharp. They've got a lot of like those very restrained Volkswagen nice touches. Somebody noticed that the way the grill bars sort of extend into the lamps. Mm-hmm. It's just like it's a subtle thing, and I think it lines up with the LEDs that are accents or something. Maybe it doesn't, but it does. Pretty.
Yeah. That is one of the really nice details. The head of exterior design for VW was there, and he was talking about that a little bit. Casey, were you familiar with the CC?
Yeah,
before?
I almost never saw them, but yes, I was familiar with them. And
yeah, they never sold very many of them.
They were very pretty.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah, it was based on the Passat platform, and it was the coupe, like the 4-door coupe version of the Passat, and the Arteon replaces that as kind of the top of the line Volkswagen car in Europe for now. But what they've done this time, instead of it being a sedan, it's actually a hatchback, 5-door hatchback. And it's really nice looking. I thought one of the things that was interesting was, I think last week, Dan, you were talking about driving the Beetle. And it has a 2-liter turbo 4-cylinder in there.
Yep.
That only has 170 horsepower.
174. Yeah.
And the Arteon also has a 2-liter 4-cylinder, but it's 268 horsepower.
So that's actually, and it's got to be the EA 888, which there's more than one version of it, but that's the GTI engine. It makes 220 horsepower in the GTI. So
yeah.
Why it's been detuned? I mean, you detune it in the Beetle, you're making fewer emissions, and you're hopefully getting better fuel economy. So I guess that's probably the reason.
I guess, yeah. I mean, they've always offered all these engines in a variety of different power levels for different applications. And this being Volkswagen's flagship now, they obviously had to give it more power to make it worthy, but. I just thought it was a great looking car.
It really needs more W8.
You were reading the Jalopnik story last week?
No, I didn't. I just
they had a piece about the Passat W8 and what a challenging car that was to live with.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, that engine's it's too VR two 4-cylinder narrow angle, I love it. Also, I wouldn't want to own it.
It is so utterly German. It's one of those cars that's probably great to drive and terrible to own.
Yeah. That about sums it up. What's the interior like on the Arteon? Because I've seen the exterior. It's nice. It's restrained. It's classy. I haven't really seen much of the interior. Is it equally as sort of stylish?
Yeah, Volkswagen's traditionally done a nice job on their interiors, in terms of materials and execution, and this one lives up to that. Hold on, I'm just trying to pull up a picture here. The Volkswagen media site doesn't seem to want to load tonight, but let me find that. It's definitely an attractive car. Inside, it's a really, really nice place to. I think it'll be a really nice place to spend time driving. It's got the gauges, like the new Jetta, are kind of more curved in towards the driver, wrapped around the driver. But for a 4-door coupe, the back seat felt surprisingly roomy.
Oh, you sat in it?
Yeah. Yeah, I had a chance to sit down in it. Lots of cargo space in the back because you've got that hatch. You can fold down the back seat and have plenty of room to put big stuff in there. So I think it's both a better looking and more practical car than the CC was.
So how are they making the case for this, though? When everybody's coming out of sedans, and especially large sedans, is it just because it's stylish? We just got done saying, as much as we like the CC, you don't ever see it.
That's going to be the thing to watch. I don't know. I have no idea who's going to buy this thing because it's probably not going to be cheap. This is probably going to be, mid $40,000 to get one of these. And given that the American car buyers or American consumers, don't seem to want anything to do with sedans anymore or anything that looks like a sedan unless it has a Tesla badge. I don't know. We'll have to see. It seems like an odd choice to be even bothering to launch this now, since the two best-selling Volkswagens now are the Tiguan and the Atlas.
Yeah, I see the Atlas everywhere. I'm like, oh, it's the Volkswagen Grand Cherokee.
Yeah.
But at least they have an offering. I wonder if they're okay with it being a sluggish seller, partially because it's on the MQB platform. It's not. Volkswagen seems to be pretty good about getting a lot of different cars off the same set of hardware affordably. So. Maybe
what's funny is, this is on the MQB, so is the Golf, and so is the new Jetta. The new Jetta has moved back to the MQB platform.
What was it on before?
It was on a variation of the previous generation Golf platform, I think.
Oh, it was its own thing.
It was a cost reduced version of the previous generation Golf platform.
Oh, that's right. That was the American Jetta that was like... Yeah. So they've moved it... So the Jetta has now been sort of like world harmonized? That's interesting.
Yeah, it's back on MQB. Well, and it's moved to MQB, so it's back on the same platform as the rest of the Golf family. And so is this one. This is a longer wheelbase version of it. So this is almost 112-inch wheelbase. And I think the Jetta is about 106. So that's really the only, other than the styling, that's the main difference between this and a Jetta.
Huh. Good for them. Good for them for bringing out a large sedan.
Yeah. Well, it's more mid-size, but.
Yeah. I hear Casey laughing. What's so funny?
Good for them.
Good for them. What else is there to say? Yeah. It's a pretty car. The CC, I was disappointed when they actually gave that a mid-cycle refresh because it got uglier. It got more pedestrian.
Yeah, the original face on the CC was definitely better than the refresh. The refresh made it look more like the rest of the Volkswagen lineup at the time, and it didn't really work with the rest of that body.
It's funny, but I don't really like these 4-door coupes. Like I just think that they're always ugly, and I really dislike the Mercedes-Benz ones. I know nothing about Mercedes-Benz model nomenclature, so I couldn't tell you what they're called. But
nobody does.
CLS.
Okay, I really don't like those. Particularly the hindquarters are truly horrific. I don't care for the BMW Grand Coupes. I think those are really silly. But the Arteon and the CC before it, I actually think do perhaps the best job I've seen of trying to pull off this 4-door coupe thing.
I mean, the BMW 4 Series, like whatever they Grand Coupe, the 4-door 4 Series
4 Series Grand Coupe
is like, that is the best 3 Series, and that's like Stephen Ewing came up with that sort of phrase, and I think he's absolutely right. Because it is a 3 Series, but that's the best 3 Series is the 4 Series. Yeah, but I see what you're saying. Like it's a weird car, especially because it's Volkswagen, not like Audi. So it's not like it has.
Well, that's the thing. You know, Audi has the A5, and they've now launched the A5 Sportback in North America, which, you know, the previous generation A5 Sportback wasn't sold here. So you have the A5 Sportback, which is very much the same car as this. I think it might even be on the MQB platform. I'm not sure.
Yeah, of course
I can't remember.
It is. It's Volkswagen. They have like 2 platforms.
You know, and it's pretty similar in size. You know, it's a 5-door hatchback like this. You know, a fastback hatchback. So it's like you've got that one. Why do you need this one? Doesn't make sense.
Because why not?
Yeah, I guess.
Because it'll do what it does. I don't know. Volkswagen does some inexplicable things. This is one of them.
Yeah, they'll sell a few thousand of these over the next 3 or 4 years, and then it'll go away again. And
yeah.
If
it's not like a squareback or a 411 or a Type 34 Ghia, I don't care. So.
All right. I don't really want to talk about the Uber Waymo settlement.
Okay, Uber Waymo settlement thing happened. It seemed a little weird.
They settled.
Yeah.
Waymo got Alphabet got a bunch of Uber stock, and they're moving on.
So the weird thing was it was only like 0.3%, and it's worth like $250 million.
Yeah,
that was crazy to me. I was like,
it was kind of a strange deal. But it's interesting that the settlement came out right after Travis Kalanick finished testifying. So it's like they just wanted to have Travis go on the record and say all that stuff, and then they said, okay, now we'll settle.
Yeah. And as much as we don't want to talk about it, I will just say like Waymo's case might have fallen apart had they gone any further. So it was possible, like slightly weak. All right. Okay. Yeah. We're done.
All right. So we did have a couple of Twitter comments this evening.
We did.
One of which, let's see, who is it? David was commenting about, complaining about us talking about all the cars that they can't get in Australia. And to David, I just want to say, you live in Australia, what are you complaining about?
Well, I mean, Australia is one of those environments where like it's very hot and everything is actively trying to kill you.
That's the thing that freaks me out. Having never been, it's the everything trying to kill you part that makes me concerned.
Some spiders and snakes. What are you worried about?
They're big spiders.
Yeah, they're the size of me, for goodness sakes. Oh, God.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, insects in the desert are hellish.
Yeah,
not my thing.
But spiders aren't insects, though.
I'm sorry, arachnids. But like, have you ever seen some of the things from like guys who are over in Iraqi freedom and stuff? Just like the crap that crawls out of the sand over. It's just like, what the hell is that?
It's terrifying. Like that doesn't belong on this planet.
Yeah, like huge scorpions that are super deadly. Yeah,
But one of the part of that comment, part of that thread there on Twitter was some comments about the Holden Commodore, and actually the Commodore went out of production. They ended production of the Commodore last October, so it's already gone.
Isn't it now? It's a LaCrosse, right? It's an Epsilon.
Yeah, I believe so. I think they're selling a variant of the LaCrosse there now, with a Holden badge on it.
That's sad.
So
it was better when it went the other way, when we got a Chevy. When we got a Holden with a Chevy badge.
I really think that if I could get, like, if this is not a real car, right? But if I could get what we would call a Holden Commodore, but just like you said, Dan, as a Chevy with like a modern infotainment system that doesn't make me want to kill myself, then
you just described a Chevy SS, my friend.
Well, but that's the thing. The Chevy SS, the infotainment, everything I've ever read universally is that it's garbage. And I don't want to buy a car that doesn't have Android Auto or CarPlay. And so I'm stuck. Okay. But in every other way, that's the perfect car. It's cheap. It's a 6-speed. It's rear-wheel drive with a whole bunch of power. Like, that car is made for me until I ever want to plug my phone in.
You could get a Camaro.
But if the car is entertaining enough, that's all you should need.
Yeah, says the guy with the Miata.
I agree. I agree.
I know you're right, but I got to live with it. I got to live with it, though.
I mean, yeah. They used to have a lot of really interesting cars in Australia, and the hard part is that was sort of a captive market. You know, they had Ford had a Falcon that was only in that market, and it's just too expensive for them to be doing that for the amount of sales they make, and apparently they couldn't make the case for making those products global products for whatever reason. So
yeah, I mean that is the fundamental issue with the Australian market, you know, because they insist on putting the steering wheel on that other side of the car. You know, it makes things more challenging for any manufacturer to. I guess, you know, the Japanese, you know, have had some success there because they also, you know, in the domestic market, have the steering wheel on the right hand side. But you know, it tends to make, you know, the Australian environment is somewhat unique compared to everywhere else, and so you know, the cars that kind of evolved there, just like the arachnids and snakes and everything that evolved there, were a little different, a little more extreme.
They were,
and
yeah.
You know, it was, you know, as emission standards and everything else got tougher, you know, it was just harder and harder to make the case, you know, for that small number of vehicles, that relatively small number of vehicles that were sold there.
Yeah. We also got another question. Who buys a white car?
Some software developers, I think, are the only ones.
Yes.
See,
yes.
I like white cars. When I was building
Dan. You've
Mazda6s,
you've redeemed yourself after the Sensus malarkey from earlier.
They look good. You get a white car with a tan interior. That's sharp. White car with a red interior, even better. They're hard to find now. BMW does it sometimes. But.
So in case you're not aware, my podcasting career started with a short-lived program called Neutral, wherein myself, Marco Arment, who you may know from having co-founded Tumblr, and John Siracusa, who you may know from writing these humongous OS X reviews for the Mac operating system on Ars Technica. The three of us did this short-lived program called Neutral about cars, which was like this show, but about 800 times crappier than this show will ever be, because none of us know what we're talking about. And so the running gag through that show was that I have owned nothing but white cars, for myself anyway. And I still maintain that most of those cars happened to me, and it was not a deliberate choice. The only one that was a deliberate choice was my Subaru, which I bought new. Everything else was either a hand-me-down or used or what have you. So I will say, though, that as I look at what to replace the BMW with, which I think that time is coming, if I can ever find something that I actually want to spend money on, I think I will probably go for blue if I can find it, or one of the 75 shades of gray that every car manufacturer insists on making.
Yeah, when we were getting my wife's Civic last year, you know, her last couple of cars were silver or gray, and she said, "That's enough. No more of this. It's got to have some color to it."
It's all you can find these days. I
know. That's why it took us so long to get what we wanted, because we wanted a particular configuration, but we wanted it. On the Civic, they have this gorgeous color they call Aegean blue, and we simply could not find one anywhere with the combination we wanted with that color, and so we ended up going with the Rally Red instead. But you know, it is. I mean, you could. The part of the problem is because of the way the cars are sold in this country. Most people buy their cars off the lot. And, you know, so they, you know, when they decide it's time to get a new car, they go into the dealer, they look around, they do test drive or maybe, and then they pick one off the lot. And because of, we've got this franchise dealer system where the dealers buy the cars from the factory, and so they own the car until they sell it on to the final customer. And they have to finance those cars. They want to make sure they can turn those as quickly as they can. And, unfortunately, the way it turns out is it's a lot easier to sell black, white, and silver or gray cars than it is to sell ones that are in bright colors. The number of people that want them in bright colors is a smaller percentage, and so they simply don't order as many. And oftentimes, if you want one in one of the more interesting colors, oftentimes you have to special order it, or you've got to have the dealer search the entire region to find one to trade for you to get what you want.
Yeah. And do Honda dealers even trade? I don't know that they do.
Honda dealers will trade if they have something to trade. The problem is none of the Honda dealers had any. There just simply weren't any. When we were shopping, there weren't any blue Civic hatchbacks with the driver assist package on there. They just did not exist. And so I think there were it's like 3 or 4 of them built last year. Maybe it seemed like anyway, but there were hundreds of them in black and gray and silver and white. So we ended up going with the one red one we could find.
All right. I mean, I'm not a chromophobe. I am a chromophile. I like color. I've had several, distinctive blue cars with tan interiors, which I think looks fabulous. I'm not a fan of black interiors because they're dull and drab. So yeah, put some color on your damn cars.
Well, it's funny, when I bought my first Mustang when I graduated, I deliberately ordered one in the gray color they had because I wanted it to be as invisible as possible.
Well, that's good thinking. Yeah.
Because I was aware of what I was driving and was trying not to attract attention from local law enforcement.
5-liter Fox body Mustang. I mean, it would get to 60 real quick in like 9 seconds.
No. It was like 6 seconds.
Oh, well done.
What year? What year was your
91.
Fox body? Oh yeah, no, those were quick. They had the roller cam and everything.
Yeah, it was fuel injected and everything. And so it was a lot quicker than that. In fact, the one I had, because it was the notchback, was the quickest combination of all. It was the lightest.
It's light.
One.
Yeah.
But So, but everything after that, was when I bought my next Mustang, it was a bright blue color, and other stuff has been in other colors. So it's nice to have something that's not silver in the garage anymore. Although, granted, my Miata is silver, but hey, what are you going to do?
Your Miata has a wrap on it, though. It's not.
That's true. That can be peeled off.
Yeah. So, I think those are really. Oh, we also had one more question. Was let me find it here, so I can get the exact wording correct. When will the special Casey on Cars Wrangler episode be?
Yeah, if only. I've been trying to get myself some seat time in a new Wrangler, and I haven't been able to. So again, if you happen to be an ATP listener, which is the Accidental Tech Podcast, which is my normal show, hello plug. You can find it at atp.fm. Anyway, I've been talking about how I really am getting to the point that I want to replace my 335, as I mentioned earlier, and I've been hemming and hawing over what to do because on paper, I think the Golf R is in many ways the right answer, but I really, 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 really like having a sunroof, and you can't have it on the Golf R. The Accord Sport
Civic Type R.
Why do you like having a sunroof? You like a thing that you can put a snow brush through, or you like stuff that breaks?
I've never had a leaky sunroof, and I've had.
I put a snow brush through the tempered glass panel of one of the Volvos.
Well, that's because you live in an Arctic climate, like a monster.
And then the dealer couldn't fix it. They were like, "Oh, it didn't work before." I was like, "No, it worked perfectly before," because they didn't clean out all the glass. So a year later, I had to drop the headliner, drop the entire pan assembly for the sunroof, which meant taking out both front seats and get all the the glass chunks. Anyway, I'm sorry. Anyway, you don't need a sunroof and you don't need a Wrangler. That's
well,
just me.
okay. We can argue the Wrangler, but we have to take it as writ that I want 3 pedals and I want a darn sunroof, and I do not particularly
Civic Type R.
And I do not particularly want front wheel drive either. But I could probably get over front wheel drive. The thing with the Civic,
you could if you drove the Civic Type R. You might.
But the thing is, I would need a paper bag to put over my head every time I sat in it from embarrassment because it is so hideously ugly.
Wait, can't you just get like a Marco or a John Mask?
That's fair. That is true. That might work. But no, it's just so ugly. And I also actually tried to get some seat time in a Civic Type R, thanks to Sam. And I was told, I forget if I was told Tough Noogies, it's winter, or Tough Noogies, we're not doing that right now. I think it was at Tough Noogies, it's winter.
I think there was none in the fleet right now.
Yeah. Either way, I'd love to get some seat time in the Civic, but the question I've asked myself, not actually that dissimilarly from you, Dan, is should I just eschew the whole like sports sedan idea and in luxury, because the luxurious sports sedan idea? Should I just toss that to the curb and say, you know what, I'm going to go the polar opposite direction. I just want something that's fun. And to me, a Jeep Wrangler is fun. And my dad has had Wranglers on and off my entire upbringing, and he has a 2012 Wrangler right now. I forget exactly what year it is. It's not new, but it's not old either. And they're fun. They're loud. They're bouncy. They're the opposite of cushy. They are the opposite of luxurious. They are the opposite of fast. But in some ways, I almost wonder if that would be healthy for me to be in a car that even if I try to drive it fast, I can't. If I really even wanted it to be luxurious, it won't be. And the stuff in the new Jeep, the JL Jeeps, it's the JL Jeep Wrangler, it looks like they've made a lot of really sensible improvements. So I really, really, really want to give it a shot.
And given that you don't really have much of a commute to speak of, even if and when you do go back from paternity leave, go for it. What the hell? Right,
and that's what I'm thinking. And coincidentally, I was going to bring this up earlier, but the conversation had moved on. But we have I hope you're both sitting down. The Richmond Auto Show is this weekend here in Richmond, Virginia.
Ooh.
And it's funny because it's exactly what you were describing, Sam, about the Chicago Auto Show, which is to say it's just all of the local dealers park, most of their cars in the same room, and you get to walk around and sit in them. And normally that's not that exciting. However, our 3-year-old, I think, will love it. And it was actually really convenient last year because we were able to very quickly cross shop some of the competitors for the XC90, and Aaron just sitting in some of these competitors, including the Mazda, actually. Is it the CX-7 and CX-9, or did I get that wrong?
CX-5 and CX-9.
Okay.
But the CX-9 is really nice.
Well, and that's what it was that for her, and I remember thinking the same, actually. The CX-5 we sat in, and it was the way the interior was laid out, we much preferred, but it was smaller than we wanted. The CX-9, and I can't remember the specifics, I wish I could, but the CX-9, we just didn't care for the interior layout. That doesn't mean it's not nice by any stretch. It's just we didn't care for the layout, even though the size was right. And so we were able to cross-shop all these cars. And I am hopeful that I might see myself like a Civic Type R. And granted, I won't be able to drive it, but at least I'd be able to see it in person. Or, I don't think the Wranglers are really out yet, are they? Are they actually in dealers?
Yeah, they're in dealers. Right now, they only have the V6s. The 4-cylinder Wrangler is still a couple of months away. But the V6s are out there. They've been on sale for a few weeks now.
Oh, okay. So you never know.
I was looking at that Wrangler. It's really, really intriguing because it looks like the old JK in a lot of ways, but it's very comprehensively updated. Yet, the windshield still folds, and there's you
can still take
clever.
The doors off.
Yeah. There's a lot of safety innovation that's gone into it. It's almost like they made a unibody car. Or not unibody, but the body structure there's more body structure than ever before on the new Jeep. Because if you look, they've got windshield pillars and a windshield frame basically that never goes away. So you're actually folding the windshield down, and it's almost like a tailgate in that sense. If you can picture that, it's just hinged at the bottom. And I thought that was really clever because you've still got the protection. And it has to have that, but they go up and then they sort of form this integral roll bar. So I like all of the thinking, and they really they can't screw up the Jeep, so they have to put all that thinking into it. it's got heat extractors behind the front wheels, which are, it's a nice touch. It's just a very clever update, and the interior looks a lot better. I'm sure, the interior of the old one was functional, and you get a Sahara model. It's actually kind of comfy. Well, but I don't want to talk you into it because
now if you could just get a Wrangler Trackhawk.
Oh,
Wrangler Trackhawk could be all right. But there's those guys putting the LS.
That's true. I mean, what doesn't have an LS, right? But that's the thing.
Everything should have an LS.
But that's the thing is that if you look at it, like I want a 3-pedal car and I want something fun, and this is the opposite of every other kind of fun. It's the opposite kind of fun of a 335. It's the opposite kind of fun of a Golf R, but it's still fun, just in a very different way. And so I'm looking at the 2018 Wrangler and thinking to myself, if I can swallow the just astronomical asking price, like, because I would probably get a Sahara or a Rubicon, and they are not cheap. I mean, you're looking at $40,000 to $45,000 for a brand new one, because I would have to do the blasphemous thing and get a 4-door because I have 2 small children, which I fully recognize is terrible, but it's what I would have to do.
But here's the issue.
There's nothing terrible about having 2 small children. Don't talk about your kids that way.
I don't know.
It's debatable, right?
I say this as someone who has 2 children that are grown and out of the house now. So.
Right. In hindsight, I'm sure it's delightful. I'm not there yet. The 4-doors is fine. I prefer the 2-door Wrangler because it's a little more, it's more maneuverable. Sure. The problem with like the idea that you will find like a good deal on a lightly used Jeep. No, you will find a bad deal on a lightly used Jeep, because they maintain their resale like crazy. So in a lot of ways, it's one of those cars that, like, if you want to just swallow you
might as well just get it new and get the warranty and everything and be done with it.
Yeah. So if I were to pull the trigger tomorrow, having not test driven any of these cars, including, I mean, I really think if I did drive a Civic Type R, from the way everyone I know, not just you guys, talks about it, it is quite possible I would get over the fact that it is truly, utterly hideous on the outside. But having not driven any of these yet...
Trust me, you will.
Having not driven any of these
you don't see any of that hideousness from inside.
That is very true.
I don't know. I can feel the idea that, like, you're driving something ridiculous and you know it. Like, I can feel that shit.
Yes, but when you step on it and go around a corner... Oh,
yeah, I know.
You forget all about that.
I know, but be that as it may, having driven nothing yet, I really think if I were a betting man, I would probably bet that I would buy a Wrangler over anything else, because even though it is compromised in many ways, I think it is compromised in more agreeable ways to me, because I would get a soft top. I would probably take the doors off in the summer and perhaps get like a set of really, really light doors. Like that's what my dad has, is he has, cloth doors that he uses in the summertime that I don't think they lock. And if they do, it's hilarious because all you have to do is like pick them up to unlock them. It's like all for show. But it's kind of like an erector set car. And I don't think I would go crazy tricking it out or anything like that. But just having, the option of the soft doors during the summer or whatever, I think it would be so much fun. And I actually borrowed Dad's prior Wrangler when I was, just a fresh adult and had my first big boy job. And so I lived with a Wrangler for a month or two. And granted, it was only a month or two, but I really liked it. It was a lot of fun. It's a terrible car in many, many, many ways. But if you know its faults going into it and accept that, it actually can be a lot of fun and be really nice. And I think that's the problem. I've talked about this on my show, and everyone on the internet is like, oh, how could you possibly buy a Wrangler? The pieces of garbage, blah. And
no, they're not. They're not though. But you have to understand that they will run into, some service needs because they have a traditional 4-wheel drive system. So there's stuff under there that does wear out, and it's hauling, a lot of weight. It's got solid axles, and it's going to,
only on the back. The front is independent.
Okay. That's right.
They changed that a couple generations ago.
Yeah. Either way, like there's links and ball joints and, universal joints and stuff. Like there's just things that wear out. And you have to understand that. Like, I think that's something that a lot of people don't take into account. They'll buy the Jeep and it'll be expensive, and then they'll use the Jeep, and then the Jeep will break, and the Jeep will be expensive to repair.
But the thing of it is
Yes.
that
But Casey's used to that because he owns a BMW right now.
So
That's true.
anything
That's
will be
true.
cheaper than this damn car, no matter how you slice
I don't know.
it.
Jeeps can get pretty freaking pricey.
Compared to what German car parts cost,
Exactly.
I think you'll have a net benefit.
Are we getting
That's true.
getting a diesel Wrangler at any point?
Yes.
Should I hold out for that?
No.
Fair enough.
You might want to consider waiting till the summer for the 4-cylinder.
Why?
The Turbo 4 is going to be perfect.
Really?
Yeah, because it's the same engine that's in the Giulia and Stelvio.
Well, see, now you're using my weakness against me. That's not fair.
Yeah, no, four-cylinder Jeeps have always been fantastic. They've been my favorite because they don't go worth a shit, but they're just so perfect.
That's the thing. This one, that won't be the case. It'll actually be. I think it's slightly less power than the V6, but more torque.
Yeah, and that's what the V6 really needs in the Jeep. Like I have Pentastar.
You know, the 4-cylinder will also have the 48-volt mild hybrid system on it, so you'll have even more torque.
Yeah, see, that's like double secret pluses. That's perfect. Can't you get like your commute is like a mile and a half?
like that.
Can't you get like a 2,000 mile a year lease or something?
Maybe, who knows?
For like $10,
if only. But I don't know. I've never leased a car. The whole thought of leasing, even though if you look at the math, it's not quite so cut and dry. The whole thought of leasing just kind of grosses me out because I feel like I'm
me too.
But it's actually funny because Marco on ATP, we were talking privately, and he was explaining to me, and I mean this in both funny way and not so funny way. He was saying to me, hey, if you look at how much you paid for your car, and once it was paid off and all that, and look at all the repair bills and think about it, you do that math, which I did, and it's like, I forget exactly what it was. I don't have it in front of me, but it was like my 335 has effectively cost me $500 or so a month. And I never thought of it that way because, we put a fair bit of money, we put a lot of money down on it. And so, I never looked at it as having a particularly large monthly payment, but the reality of the situation is once you factor in, the depreciation and all the repairs that have gone into it, I could have had a $500 a month lease and it would have been roughly equivalent. It's just, the cost would have been spread out a little bit more. And when he told me that, my eyes kind of exploded out of my head because I was like, wait.
Yeah, but don't forget the down payment you've got to make at the front of that lease too. So that's another 5 or 6 or 10 grand.
See, this is what I say to people considering leasing. It's like leasing, you have to understand it's a rental. And also, if you make a down payment when you're leasing, you're stupid because you're renting a car. You should not be putting money down on a lease. Like that's you might as well just take that $4,000 payment and go buy a Buick. Like seriously,
or a Crown Vic,
or a Crown Vic. Right?
Yeah, just buy a decent 10-year-old car with the $4,000 you're going to have to fork over for that lease down payment, because you will own the thing outright, and it will function for many months. And when it does break, it might cost you 1 or 2 lease payments. So that's super practical dad advice.
I'm looking at building a Sahara just for argument's sake. I just now noticed that on the build tool on the web, on the left-hand side, there's icons to change the view with the top on and off and change the view with the doors on and off, which is the most delightfully Jeep thing I think I've ever seen in my life. So good.
Well, we know what you're doing.
That's something you can
night.
only do with a Wrangler.
And that's the thing, like Dad, again, like I know a lot of people who have Wranglers, especially now that they have, power windows and all that. So the doors weigh 1 billion pounds. I know a lot of people who've never taken the doors off their cars, and it is the most, if you don't have, small children in the car or don't like them, it is the most magical thing in the world to be in a car with no top and no doors. It is just the coolest thing. I mean, well, to me anyway, maybe it's not to you guys, maybe it's not to a listener, but to me,
no, I love
so
it.
Fun.
It's the best in the summer because you don't even need air conditioning. You just you get the wind, just it blows through your shoes and up your pant leg, and it just like inflates your shirt. It's the best.
I love it.
Yeah,
I kind of want one.
I like the charms of the Wrangler. They're definitely there. It's just expensive.
Oh, it's so expensive. I mean, it's like 45. Again, I haven't finished building mine, but it's 45-ish or something like that, which is for a Wrangler. Like I understand a Wrangler has a lot going on, but it just seems like it shouldn't cost that much. But boy, does it ever.
Well, because it's popular.
Yeah.
It costs that much because they can.
Yep.
All right. Well, Casey, thank you for joining us again.
My pleasure.
Yes,
thank you
Casey.
so much, and thank you again, Sam, for arranging the Alpha Loaners. I am forever indebted to both of you guys, but particularly Sam. And anytime you want me to come on and talk about really anything, just let me know.
All right.
All right. Well, we'll have you on and we can talk about the relative merits of the next Mac Pro.
Yeah, it sounds perfect. It's my favorite topic.
We know. I mean, that's the only reason I listen to ATP is just to hear you groan about when those guys start talking about the Mac Pro.
Yeah, I love it so much. It's so great. Thank you, gentlemen. I really do appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, Casey. All right. We'll see you all next week.
Owning a boat comes with a number of perks, like being able to fling your favorite fishing rod around. And here's another perk. Geico's boat insurance covers your boat and your belongings. And with specialist support from agents that are as passionate about boating as you are, there's so much value that you'll want to high-five someone. But not while you're holding your fishing rod. That's a prized possession. So hold on tight with both hands and keep it covered through boat insurance. Get more with Geico.